Commander Lee stood on the observation deck of Earth's first interstellar vessel, Discovery. Through the reinforced glass, he watched as the alien ship approached, smooth and silvery, like liquid metal frozen in space. His heart raced. After years of training as a xenolinguist, today he would finally put his skills to use in humanity's first contact with the Celestial Confederation. "Commander, they're requesting to speak with our translation team," said Captain Park through the comm system. "Ready, Captain," Lee replied, straightening his blue uniform. His fingers tapped nervously against his translation tablet. The alien delegation appeared on the main screen, a diverse array of beings with forms that challenged human imagination. Some had multiple limbs, others skin that shifted colors like living rainbows. All appeared female, though Lee knew better than to apply human concepts of gender to extraterrestrial species. "Welcome, representatives of Earth," said a tall figure with opalescent skin that caught the light in hypnotic patterns. "I am High Ambassador Sun of the Celestial Confederation." Lee listened carefully, adjusting parameters on his translation device. The alien language was complex, with tonal shifts that carried additional meaning beyond the words themselves. "High Ambassador, we are honored by your presence," Lee translated for Captain Park. "Earth welcomes peaceful contact with the Confederation." The meeting progressed smoothly until a communication from Earth Central Command interrupted. Lee frowned as he read the message. Political officials were demanding direct involvement in the negotiations, overriding the carefully planned protocols. "Captain, I need to speak with you privately," Lee said, stepping away from the communications array. While they discussed the demands from Earth, a bright flash of light filled the observation deck. Lee felt a strange pulling sensation, and then darkness. When he opened his eyes, he found himself in an unfamiliar chamber. The walls pulsed with soft blue light, and he was surrounded by several alien beings, all watching him with expressions he couldn't read. "What happened? Where am I?" Lee asked, reaching for his translation device only to find it missing. "You are aboard the celestial vessel Harmony," replied a melodic voice. A slender alien with 4 arms and skin that shimmered like mother of pearl approached him. "I am Ja, technical representative of the Aquari system." "There was some kind of accident?" Lee asked, trying to remain calm. "A malfunction in our transport system," Jia explained. "It activated during your meeting and brought you aboard our vessel." Another alien stepped forward, taller than the others with deep violet skin and eyes that seemed to contain galaxies. "I am Sun, High Ambassador. The malfunction has been reported to your captain. Unfortunately, returning you at this moment is impossible." "Why?" Lee asked, a knot forming in his stomach. "Your biological signature has been registered in our diplomatic database," explained a third alien with feathered appendages and golden skin. "I am Mary, protocol representative. According to our systems, you are now listed as Earth's Cultural Exchange Ambassador." Lee blinked in confusion. "There must be a mistake. I'm just a translator." "The system does not make mistakes," Nari insisted, her feathers ruffling slightly. "The registration is complete and cannot be undone without proper ceremonies on your home world." Before Lee could protest further, a violent shudder ran through the ship. The lights flickered, and several aliens steadied themselves against the walls. "What was that?" Lee asked. Jia's expression darkened. "Engine malfunction. Severe." The next hours passed in a blur as Lee was hustled through corridors filled with frantic activity. He gathered that something catastrophic had happened to the ship's main propulsion system. Emergency protocols were engaged, and he found himself directed to a stasis chamber. "You must enter," instructed Sun. "The ship is initiating emergency procedures." "What's happening?" Lee demanded. "Our engine core is destabilizing," Jia explained quickly. "The ship will enter emergency orbit around the nearest suitable planet while automated repairs begin." "How long will the repairs take?" Lee asked, hesitating at the entrance to the stasis pod. Sun and Jia exchanged glances. "The AI estimates approximately 10 of your Earth years." 10 years. Lee felt his knees weaken. That's impossible. I can't stay here for 10 years. I regret to inform you that we have no alternative, Sun said, her voice gentle but firm. Communication with both Earth and Confederation Central is impossible from emergency orbit. The stasis will make the time pass without aging. Lee tried to process this information as more alarms sounded throughout the ship. How many people are on board? 41, including yourself, replied Nari, who had joined them. One representative from each of the founding systems of the Confederation, and now you. All female? Lee asked, noticing he hadn't seen any male aliens. The Confederation's diplomatic corps is primarily female, Sun explained. Many member species have matriarchal societies. Another violent shudder ran through the ship. We must enter stasis now, Jia insisted. As Lee reluctantly stepped into the stasis pod, he took one last look at the alien delegation. 40 females of various species, all watching him with expressions ranging from curiosity to concern. When we awaken, Sun promised, we will find a solution. The pod sealed around him. Cold mist filled the chamber as Lee's consciousness began to fade. His last thought before darkness claimed him was that this wasn't how he had imagined first contact would go. He dreamed of Earth, of oceans and mountains he might not see again for a decade. When Lee awoke, he found himself in a small chamber. The ship's AI spoke in a soothing voice. Welcome back, Earth Ambassador. You have been in stasis for 7 days, while the ship established stable orbit. The other representatives are awakening now. 10 years, Lee whispered to himself. I'm stuck here for 10 years. With proper cooperation, repairs may proceed faster than estimated, the AI offered helpfully. Lee sat up slowly, trying to gather his thoughts. He was alone on a damaged alien ship, orbiting an unknown planet, with 40 female representatives from across the galaxy. No way to contact Earth. No way to return home. As the door to his chamber slid open, Lee took a deep breath and straightened his shoulders. If he was going to be stuck here for 10 years, he would need to adapt quickly. He stepped into the corridor where several alien women waited, watching him with curious eyes. The adventure had only just begun. Lee sat cross-legged on the floor of his quarters, surrounded by data tablets filled with information about the 40 alien species aboard the Harmony. After 2 weeks of studying, his head swam with details about biology, customs, and taboos he needed to remember. A soft chime announced a visitor. Enter, he called, standing quickly. The door slid open to reveal Nari, the golden-feathered protocol representative. Her 4 eyes blinked in sequence as she entered. Earth Ambassador, your presence is requested at the communal meal, she said formally. It will be your first official gathering with all representatives. Lee nodded, trying to hide his nervousness. I'm ready. The dining hall was a large, circular chamber with a round table that accommodated all representatives. Lee noticed that each section was slightly modified to suit different physiologies. His place had a standard chair, while others had specialized supports, liquid baths, or gravity modifiers. As he entered, conversation stopped. 40 pairs, or more, of eyes turned to study him. Lee bowed respectfully, a gesture his research suggested was understood across many cultures. Thank you for including me, he said, taking his seat beside Sun, the High Ambassador. Of course, Sun replied, her opalescent skin shifting from blue to purple. This is an opportunity to learn about Earth customs as well. Perhaps you could demonstrate a human dining ritual. Lee hesitated, feeling a spotlight on him. Well, on Earth, some people say thanks before eating. A gratitude for the food and company. Fascinating, said a representative with scaled skin and elongated fingers. On my world, we believe eating in silence honors the food. In my culture, added another with crystalline features, we sing to enhance digestion. Lee smiled politely, already overwhelmed by the conflicting customs. The meal itself was an adventure. Each representative was served food suitable for their biology. Lee found himself with a bowl of something that resembled soup but changed colors as he stirred it. It synthesized to match human nutritional needs. explained Jia, the technical representative. The ship analyzed your biology during stasis. Li took a cautious sip. It tasted like chicken soup with an undertone of something fruity. "It's good," he said with genuine surprise. Conversation flowed around the table in dozens of languages, all translated through small devices embedded in the table. Li listened, trying to absorb as much as possible about the cultures represented. "Earth Ambassador," called a voice from across the table. It belonged to Mina, a representative whose body seemed partly transparent, revealing swirling lights beneath her skin. "Is it true humans only live for 100 years? The question silenced other conversations. "Yes, that's about our maximum natural lifespan," Li answered. Murmurs rippled around the table. "How do you accomplish anything?" asked another representative with genuine curiosity. "We work quickly," Li said with a small smile. "Our short lives give us motivation. And yet you've barely left your own solar system," noted a representative with multiple limbs and eyes that rotated independently. Her tone wasn't unkind, but Li felt the sting of the observation. "Yumi, that observation lacks context." Sun intervened smoothly. "Each species develops at its own pace." Li cleared his throat. "It's a fair point. We are younger than most Confederation species, but humans adapt quickly. It's our strength." "We shall see," Yumi replied, her eyes rotating with interest. After the meal, Li was invited to join a recreational gathering in what the aliens called the Harmony Chamber, a room designed for relaxation and social bonding. Various representatives engaged in activities from meditation to games of strategy. Li found himself drawn to a group playing something that resembled three-dimensional chess. Watching carefully, he began to understand the basic rules. "Would you like to try, Earth Ambassador?" asked Hana, a representative whose skin emitted a soft glow in the dim light. "I'd be honored, though I'll probably lose badly," Li admitted. "Then it will be educational for us both," Hana replied, resetting the game pieces. The game was indeed challenging, but Li's experience with chess helped him grasp the strategy. Although he lost, he made several moves that clearly surprised Hana. "You think unconventionally," she remarked. "Most beginners follow obvious patterns. Humans often look for unusual solutions," Li explained. "When you only have 100 years, you can't always wait for the traditional approach to work." Word of the interesting game spread, and soon Li found himself surrounded by curious representatives, asking questions about Earth and human thinking. "Is it true humans still use physical combat to settle disputes?" asked Da, a representative with metallic skin that reflected light like a mirror. "Some do, but most of us prefer peaceful solutions," Li answered carefully. "Yet your history is filled with wars," observed another representative. "Yes," Li admitted, "we're still growing as a species, but our capacity for violence is matched by our capacity for compassion." The conversation might have become uncomfortable, but a sudden alarm interrupted them. Red lights flashed throughout the chamber. "Water recycling system failure," announced the ship's eye. "Sector 3 will lose water purification in 60 minutes. Representatives scattered to their assigned emergency stations. Li followed Jia to the engineering section, where several technical representatives were already examining holographic displays of the system. "The biofilters are contaminated," Jia explained to the group. "But we lack the materials to replace them until the automated manufacturing completes the next cycle, 3 days from now." Li studied the diagrams, remembering something from Earth history. "May I make a suggestion?" he asked hesitantly. The representatives turned to him with skepticism evident in their expressions. "On Earth, before we had advanced filtration, we used layered natural materials, sand, charcoal, and certain minerals, to purify water. The ship has these basic elements in the hydroponics bay." "Primitive filtration," Yumi scoffed. "This is a Confederation vessel." "The principles are sound," Li insisted. "I can demonstrate." After some debate, with water supplies dwindling, they allowed Li to build his makeshift filter. Using materials from the hydroponics section, He constructed a layered filtration system that, while not as efficient as the biofilters, successfully removed contaminants. By the time the emergency was resolved, attitudes toward Lee had subtly shifted. His simple solution had worked when advanced technology had failed. That night, returning to his quarters, Lee found a small gift outside his door, a crystal that glowed with warm light. A note accompanied it. Sometimes old wisdom complements new technology. Thank you for the lesson. Jaya. Lee placed the crystal beside his bed, its gentle glow reminding him that even here, thousands of light years from Earth, human ingenuity still had value. Perhaps being stranded wasn't entirely a disaster. Perhaps it was also an opportunity for him and for the Confederation representatives to learn from each other. As he drifted to sleep, he wondered what other challenges the coming days would bring. 3 months had passed since Lee's arrival on the Harmony. The days had fallen into a routine, studying alien cultures, helping with ship repairs, and slowly building trust with the representatives. He had even begun teaching a small group about Earth history and customs, which had become surprisingly popular. Lee was in the hydroponics bay, tending to a small section he'd been given to grow earth plants from seeds found in his emergency kit, when the ship's alarm system activated with a sound he hadn't heard before. "Attention all representatives," the ship's AI announced, its voice calm but urgent. "Unknown vessels detected approaching our position. Defensive protocols initiated." Lee hurried to the command center where many representatives had already gathered. The main view screen showed 3 ships with sleek, predatory designs closing in on their position. "Pirates," said Sun, her opalescent skin darkening with concern. "They prey on disabled vessels in neutral space." "How did they find us?" Lee asked, joining the circle of representatives. "Our emergency power signature," explained Jia, her 4 arms moving rapidly over control panels. "We've been detected." "They're hailing us," announced Nari, the protocol representative. The screen flickered, revealing a being with gray skin and cybernetic implants covering half its face. "Disabled Confederation vessel," it said in a rasping voice. "Your situation is unfortunate. We offer assistance in exchange for technology and resources." Sun stepped forward. "This is a diplomatic vessel under Confederation protection. Any aggression will be met with severe consequences." The pirate captain laughed. "Confederation protection. You're alone in neutral space with damaged systems. We've scanned your vessel. You have no weapons, minimal shields, and 41 life forms aboard. Surrender your valuables, and we'll leave your ship intact." The transmission ended abruptly. "They'll attack within the hour," said Da, the representative with metallic skin. "Standard pirate tactics." The representatives erupted in argument. Some advocated surrendering non-essential technology to avoid conflict. Others insisted on maintaining Confederation protocols, which forbade negotiating with pirates. Lee listened, noting how each species approached the problem according to their cultural norms. None seemed to consider actual defense. "May I speak?" Lee finally asked, raising his voice above the debate. The room quieted, all attention turning to him. "On Earth, we have a saying. Sometimes the best defense isn't the strongest, it's the most unexpected." Lee moved to the holographic display of their ship. "These pirates expect a disabled diplomatic vessel with no defenses. What if we show them something different?" "Explain," Sun requested, her eyes focusing intently on Lee. "They think we're helpless, but this ship has 41 beings with unique abilities. If we coordinate those abilities, we might surprise them." Skeptical murmurs rippled through the group. "What do you suggest, Earth Ambassador?" asked Hana, the light-manipulating representative who had been most receptive to Lee's ideas. "A coalition," Lee said simply, each representative using their natural abilities in coordination, not as 40 separate species, but as one unified force. The idea was radical. Confederation species rarely combine their biological abilities, preferring to maintain cultural separation. After heated debate, Sun made the decision. We will try the humans' approach. We have little to lose. The next hours were a flurry of activity. Lee worked with each representative to identify how their natural abilities could be utilized defensively. Hannah could bend light, creating illusions. Minna's crystalline body could focus energy. Day could generate defensive fields. Yumi, despite her initial skepticism, revealed her species could briefly manipulate gravity. We don't need traditional weapons, Lee explained as they gathered in the command center. We just need to convince them attacking us would be too costly. When the pirate ships moved into position surrounding the Harmony, Lee's coalition was ready. The pirates hailed again. Your time is up. Prepare to be boarded, or we'll breach your hull. Sun responded with unexpected confidence. We decline your offer. Approach at your own risk. The pirate captain sneered. Your choice. The transmission ended. They're launching boarding craft, Gia reported, monitoring the sensors. Everyone to positions, Lee called. The representatives moved with purpose, each knowing their role in the plan. As the first boarding craft attached to the ship's outer hull, Hannah activated her light manipulation, creating the illusion of heavy weaponry deploying across the Harmony surface. Yumi focused her gravity manipulation on the craft, making it struggle to maintain its connection. Inside, Lee coordinated from the command center. Dai, prepare your energy field for when they breach. Mina, stand by to focus the energy. The hull reverberated with the sound of cutting tools. Moments later, a section of wall gave way, and pirate boarders in armored suits pushed through, only to encounter Dai's shimmering energy field. As they fired weapons, Mina's crystalline body redirected the energy back at them, overloading their systems. The surprised pirates retreated, but a second boarding craft was already attaching to another section of the ship. They're trying a different approach, Lee warned through the communication system. Jun, Nari, they're coming your way. In that section, Jun, whose species could manipulate temperature, created a cold zone that froze the cutting tools. Nari, with her feathered form, released a harmless but disorienting pollen that confused the pirates' sensors. The coordinated defense continued across multiple breach attempts. Lee's strategy wasn't to defeat the pirates, but to make boarding so difficult and confusing that they would decide the Harmony wasn't worth the trouble. After the fifth failed attempt, the pirate ships withdrew to a safe distance. Their captain appeared on screen again, his expression now a mixture of confusion and respect. What are you? He demanded. Our scans showed a disabled diplomatic vessel. Sun stepped forward. We are the Celestial Confederation, and this vessel is under our protection, and under the protection of Earth. She gestured to Lee, who stood at her side. The pirate captain's eyes narrowed as he studied Lee. A new species. Interesting. After a pause, he added, We'll seek easier targets. This time. As the pirate ships departed, celebrations erupted throughout the Harmony. Representatives who had barely spoken to each other were now exchanging animated accounts of their roles in the defense. Lee found himself surrounded by representatives congratulating him. Your strategy was unorthodox, admitted Yumi, her independently rotating eyes fixed on him. But effective. Humans adapt quickly, Lee said with a smile. And apparently, so can the Confederation when necessary. That evening, Sun called a formal gathering. With all representatives assembled, she addressed them. Today we did something unprecedented. We combined our abilities across species lines. We formed what our Earth ambassador calls a coalition. Her skin shimmered with colors that indicated deep emotion in her species. Perhaps there are other Earth ideas we should consider. Lee looked around the room at the representatives who now regarded him with new respect. For the first time since arriving on the Harmony, he felt not like a stranded human, but like a true ambassador, building bridges between worlds in ways no one had anticipated. The coalition had been formed in crisis, but Lee suspected it was just the beginning of something much more significant. 6 months after the pirate attack, Lee sat in his personal workspace, surrounded by diagrams and data tablets. The small room had been converted into what he jokingly called his laboratory. Star charts and engine schematics covered the walls, alongside notes written in his increasingly proficient Confederation standard script. Every night after his regular duties, Lee studied the ship's systems. His background wasn't in engineering, but his natural curiosity and methodical approach helped him grasp the complex technology of the Harmony. Tonight, he was focused on the quantum stabilizers, the components that had failed catastrophically and left them stranded. Still working. Jiz's voice came from the doorway. The four-armed technical representative had become Lee's closest ally in understanding the ship's technology. "I had an idea I wanted to test," Lee replied, not looking up from his calculations. "There's something about the quantum field generation that reminds me of theories we were developing on Earth." Jia moved closer, her pearlescent skin catching the light as she examined his work. "These equations, they're not standard Confederation physics. No, they're adapted from Earth's particle physics models." Lee finally looked up, dark circles under his eyes betraying his lack of sleep. "Your quantum stabilizers create a field that prevents matter from shifting between dimensional states, right?" "Essentially, yes. On Earth, we were experimenting with similar concepts, but our approach was different. We focused on reinforcing the natural quantum state rather than preventing shifts." Lee pulled up a simulation on his tablet. "What if we combined approaches?" Jia watched the simulation with growing interest. The four small eyes above her primary set widened, a sign of excitement in her species. "This could work, but it would require materials we don't have." "Actually," Lee said, pulling up another diagram, "I think we could repurpose components from the tertiary life support systems. They use similar field generators on a smaller scale. That would violate Confederation engineering protocols," Jia noted, but her tone wasn't dismissive. "Do protocols matter if they keep us stranded for a decade?" Jia was quiet for a moment. "I would need to discuss this with the other technical representatives. And with Sun." The next day, Lee presented his theory to a gathering of the ship's technical representatives. He stood before them, feeling the weight of their skeptical gazes. "What you're suggesting breaks fundamental rules of Confederation engineering," said Quan, a representative with scaled skin who specialized in quantum dynamics. "Yes," Lee admitted, "but those rules were established for standardization across multiple species technologies. This is an emergency situation." "The human has a point," offered Min, whose gelatinous form contained multiple brain centers. "Protocols serve us, not the other way around." The debate continued for hours. Lee answered questions, explained Earth physics concepts, and defended his unorthodox approach. By the end, the room was divided. "This will require a full vote of all representatives," Jia finally announced. "The implications go beyond technical considerations." 3 days later, all 41 inhabitants of the Harmony gathered in the assembly chamber. Lee stood before them, trying to appear confident despite his nervousness. Sun addressed the assembly. "We face an unprecedented question. Our Earth ambassador has proposed a solution that might significantly reduce our time in isolation. However, it requires breaking established protocols and granting him access to restricted technology." Her opalescent skin shifted through thoughtful colors. "This is not a decision to make lightly." Lee was permitted to present his case, explaining in simple terms how combining Earth and Confederation approaches might solve their problem. When he finished, the questions began. "Why should we trust human science?" asked Yumi. "Your species hasn't even mastered interstellar travel independently." "Sometimes fresh perspectives see solutions that experience overlooks," Lee replied. "Different doesn't mean inferior." "What if you're wrong?" asked another representative. "What if this damages the ship further?" "The simulations show minimal risk to critical systems," Lee explained, "and we can implement safeguards." After all questions were answered, the representatives voted. Lee waited anxiously as each indicated their choice on personal devices. When the last vote was registered, Sun reviewed the results. "By a margin of 3 votes, she announced, the Assembly approves the proposal." The following weeks were intense. Lee worked alongside Jia and other technical representatives, combining their knowledge. They dismantled tertiary systems, repurposed components, and built a hybrid quantum stabilizer unlike anything in Confederation records. The work created new bonds between Lee and the technical team. As they collaborated, cultural barriers fell away. Lee found himself learning about their homeworlds, their families, their hopes for the future. On my planet, Jia told him one night as they calibrated delicate equipment, lakes float above the ground. The first time I saw Earth images with water only at surface level, I thought they were strange. Lee laughed. And I think floating lakes sound impossible. Perhaps impossible depends on where you're standing. Jia replied with a meaningful glance at their creation. The day of the test arrived. Representatives gathered in the engineering section, anticipation filling the air. The hybrid stabilizer, a strange combination of sleek Confederation technology and jury-rigged Earth solutions, was connected to a small test field generator. Ready? Lee asked Jia, who stood at the control panel. She nodded, her secondary arms making final adjustments while her primary hands hovered over the activation controls. Initiating test sequence, she announced. The room fell silent as power flowed into the device. Status indicators shifted from red to yellow, and then to green. The test field stabilized, showing readings that exceeded their projections. It works, whispered Quan in disbelief. The human solution works. Cheers erupted throughout the room. Representatives who had voted against the project now approached Lee with congratulations. Even Yumi seemed impressed, her rotating eyes fixed on the stable energy readings. This is only the beginning, Lee cautioned when the celebration quieted. Scaling this to the main engines will take months of work, but it could reduce our repair time from 10 years to perhaps 3, Jia added, her skin glowing with excitement. That night, unable to sleep after the day's success, Lee stood in the observation dome, looking out at the stars. He felt someone join him and turned to see Sun. "You've changed things," she said simply. "Not just our repair timeline." "What do you mean?" For generations, the Confederation has believed our technological approach was the pinnacle of development. Today you showed us otherwise. Sun's skin rippled with colors Lee had learned to recognize as profound consideration. When we first found your species, many thought humans had little to offer the galactic community. I wonder now what other surprises Earth might hold. Lee looked back at the stars, thinking of his distant home. "I guess we'll find out together." "Yes," Sun agreed. "I believe we will." As they stood in companionable silence, Lee realized something had fundamentally shifted aboard the Harmony. He was no longer just a stranded human or even an accidental ambassador. He had become something unexpected, a bridge between ways of thinking, a catalyst for change in a civilization far older than his own. The breakthrough wasn't just in the technology. It was in the connections forming between 41 beings from across the galaxy, learning that different didn't mean incompatible after all. 7 years after the accident that stranded them in neutral space, the Harmony prepared for its return journey. What had once seemed an impossible repair had become reality through the combined efforts of 41 beings from across the galaxy. The ship hummed with energy as the hybrid quantum stabilizers, now scaled to full size, powered up for the first time. Lee stood on the observation deck, watching the stars shifted position during the final test. So much had changed since that first day. His reflection in the reinforced glass showed a man transformed, older, with a few strands of gray in his dark hair, wearing a uniform that blended Earth design with Confederation symbols. "Nervous?" asked a familiar voice. Sun approached, her opalescent skin shimmering with excitement colors. "A little," Lee admitted. 7 years is a long time to be away from home. "For a human, certainly," Sun agreed. She stood beside him, both of them gazing at the stars. "Your short lifespan makes your accomplishments here even more remarkable," the ship's AI announced. "Final diagnostics complete. All systems operational. The Harmony is ready for departure." Representatives gathered in the command center for the launch. Lee took his place among them, no longer an outsider, but a respected member of their unusual community. As the countdown began, he felt a mix of emotions: joy at returning home, pride in their shared achievement, and a surprising sadness at the thought of their journey ending. "Activating quantum drive," announced Jia from her station, her four hands moving with practiced precision across the controls. The ship hummed, then surged forward. Space bent around them as the hybrid drive engaged, a technology that now existed because Earth and Confederation science had found common ground. The journey to Earth would take 3 weeks. During that time, representatives prepared reports, gathered data, and held endless meetings about first contact protocols. The Confederation Council had been notified of their imminent arrival, and the return of the long-lost diplomatic vessel was causing excitement throughout known space. "What will you do when we reach Earth?" Minna asked Lee one evening, as several representatives shared a meal together. Lee considered the question. "Help with the transition, I suppose. Earth has had 7 years to prepare for your arrival, but seeing actual aliens will still be a shock for many humans." "They might be disappointed," joked Dai, her metallic skin gleaming. "We're not nearly as strange as humans imagine aliens to be." Everyone laughed, including Lee. It was a measure of how far they'd come that such jokes now felt comfortable rather than offensive. "Will you stay with the diplomatic service?" asked Hana, whose ability to manipulate light had been crucial in their pirate defense. "I haven't decided," Lee answered honestly. 7 years ago, I was just a translator. Now," he gestured vaguely, unable to put into words how completely his perspective had changed. As Earth grew larger in their view screens, the reality of their return began to sink in. For Lee, it brought practical concerns. His family would have aged 7 years. Would they recognize him? Would he fit back into a society that now seemed simple compared to the complexity of Confederation culture? For the representatives, there was excitement about officially welcoming a new species into galactic society. Many had grown fond of their human companion and were eager to meet more of his kind. The day of arrival came with unexpected fanfare. As the Harmony entered Earth orbit, they were greeted by a procession of ships, a hastily assembled honor guard to welcome the returning vessel. "They prepared a proper welcome," observed Sun with approval. Communications channels burst with messages. Earth governments, military officials, and scientific institutions all clamored for attention. In the chaos, Lee found a personal message from his family. With trembling hands, he opened it to find his sister's face. "Lee, they told us you're coming home. We never gave up hope. Mom and Dad are beside themselves. We're waiting for you." Tears filled his eyes. His first in many years, Ja noticed and quietly moved to stand beside him, offering silent support. Landing protocols took hours to coordinate. The Harmony wasn't designed to enter atmosphere, so a delegation would descend in shuttlecraft. Lee, as Earth's unofficial ambassador, would lead the Confederation representatives to their first official meeting with Earth leaders. As they prepared to board the shuttles, an unexpected ceremony took place. Sun gathered all representatives in the assembly chamber one final time. "Before we part ways," she announced, "we must acknowledge what we have accomplished. Not just the repair of our vessel, but the formation of bonds across species lines. We came together as 40 separate cultures. We return as something new." She turned to Lee, her skin displaying formal ceremony colors. "Earth Ambassador Lee, the Confederation Council has reviewed our reports and unanimously approved a motion. Earth will be offered immediate membership in the Celestial Confederation, the fastest invitation in our history." Applause filled the chamber. Lee stood stunned as Sun continued. "Furthermore, you personally are appointed as Earth's first official representative to the Council. Should you accept?" Lee looked around at the faces that had become so familiar. Ja with her 4 arms and pearlescent skin, Hana with her luminous glow, Da with her metallic features, Yumi with her rotating eyes, Mina with her crystalline form, and all the others who had shared this extraordinary journey. "I would be honored," he said simply. The descent to Earth happened on a clear spring day. 3 shuttlecraft, carrying Lee and 20 representatives, landed at a specially prepared facility outside what had once been United Nations headquarters. Earth officials waited on a red carpet, faces tense with anticipation. Lee was first to emerge. The sunlight felt strange on his skin after years of artificial lighting. He took a deep breath of Earth air, sweeter than he remembered, and walked forward to meet his world's leaders. "Welcome home, Commander Lee," said the Secretary General, extending a hand. "Thank you," Lee replied. "I bring representatives from the Celestial Confederation who wish to formalize relations with Earth." One by one, the alien representatives emerged from the shuttles. Gasps and murmurs ran through the assembled crowd. News cameras captured everything for a global audience watching in wonder. Sun stepped forward, her opalescent skin catching sunlight in ways that made humans blink in awe. "People of Earth," she began, "we come in peace and friendship." The formal ceremony proceeded smoothly, but Lee found his attention drawn to the sky. The remaining representatives aboard the Harmony would be watching from orbit, the first of many Confederation vessels that would soon visit Earth. The ship that had been their prison, and then their home, had become a bridge between worlds. That evening, reunited with his family, Lee sat in his childhood home trying to explain his experiences. Words felt inadequate to describe 7 years among the stars. "Are you really going back up there?" his mother asked, concern in her eyes. Lee nodded. "Earth needs someone who understands both worlds, and they need me." "They?" his father questioned. "The aliens?" Lee smiled, thinking of Ja, Sun, and all the others. "My friends," he corrected gently. "And soon, they'll be yours too." Outside the window, stars began appearing in the twilight sky. Somewhere up there, the Harmony orbited, no longer just a Confederation vessel, but a symbol of what different species could accomplish together. A ship repaired through collaboration, a coalition formed through necessity, a breakthrough achieved through open minds. Lee's journey had begun with an accident, but its impact would echo through human history forever. In being stranded, he had built a bridge. In isolation, he had created connection. What had seemed a tragedy had become the greatest opportunity Earth had ever known. And it was only the beginning.